Assessment Fellow. So Dr. Ashmita Sen Gupta, I'd like to invite you on stage. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Namaskar, Assalamu alaikum. It's lovely to be here with you today, and I extend my warm welcome to whoever is with us for this particular session on reimagining education for the next generation environment leaders. I have the privilege to be sharing this stage today with some really distinguished and highly accomplished panelists. So first off, I would request you to join me in welcoming them on stage. So Dr. Mehbooba Nasreen, might I please have the honor of having you on stage? So as she walks up, I should let you know that Dr. Mehbooba Nasreen is the professor at the Dhaka University, Pro-Vice Chancellor at the Bangladesh Open University, and the founding director of the Institute of Disaster Management and Vulnerability Studies at the University of Dhaka. She is also the regional head of GRIP South Asia, and GRIP, I would like to mention, stands for Gender Responsive Resilience and Intersectionality in Policy and Practice. As a member of the National Disaster Management Advisory Committee, the Ministry of Disaster Management and Relief, and the Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, Professor Nasreen has contributed to policy making in reducing disaster risks and other relevant areas of national and international importance. Next, Ms. Rita Banerjee, if I might have the honor of having you on stage. Ms. Rita Banerjee is the founder director of Green Hub, a Northeast Network Dusty Foot Initiative India that looks at leveraging the power of youth in conservation action and social change through the power of the visual media. She has been one of the leading environment filmmakers in India, having made multiple award-winning films under Dusty Foot Productions. This includes the Wild Meat Trail that won the Panda Award, also known as the Green Oscar, in 2010 at Wildscreen, UK. In 2017, she was awarded the National Geographic CMS Prithvi Ratna Award for contribution to the environment through films and the RBS Earth Heroes Award in 2018. She was inducted as an Ashoka Fellow in 2019. Finally, Dr. Narayan Sharma, might I please have you on stage? Dr. Narayan Sharma is an assistant professor at the Department of Environmental Biology and Wildlife Sciences, Cotton University, Guwahati, Assam, India, and an adjunct professor at the National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bangalore, Karnataka. An educationist, conservation biologist, and ecologist, Dr. Sharma has 2 decades worth of experience working in the field of education and wildlife research in Northeast India. He is a member of the Assam State Biodiversity Board and a nominated member of the IUCN Primate Specialist Group, South Asia. There was a very lukewarm response for some reason. Might I please? Yeah, thank you. So, I'm going to join you here so that we can have a real conversation. So, Naranda, I'm going to start with you. So, you have a faculty position at what is possibly one of the oldest academic institutions in the greater Eastern Himalayan region, right? So, what do you think are the unique opportunities that the region offers for the next generation environment leaders?
Yeah, thank you so much, Asmita. Yeah, you are right. Cotton University is one of the oldest institutions. It was established in 1901, so almost 121 years old. When I joined in 2015, the Cotton University didn't have the dedicated department for wildlife research or environmental research. So though it was a kind of a fringe subject which was there in geology and botany department, and thanks to Professor Durba Soikia, then Vice Chancellor, who established this department and gave us opportunity to start a new course. So initially it was mostly the PG course. Still the majority of our time is going to train the PG postgraduate students. When we joined this, the biggest challenge is to set a curriculum which should be region specific, and also to bring the subject from fringe to the mainstream, because otherwise there was a conventional say subject like physics or chemistry, geology, and the botany. they were dominated in the natural science stream and the other subjects. So the biggest challenge was to tell people that the environmental science is just not for sake of studying it. Like UGC University Grant Commission has made it mandatory to undergraduate students to opt for this EVS course, which was earlier taught by some other departments. So the biggest challenge was first is to design a curriculum that encompasses the different aspect of, say, wildlife and ecology and biodiversity aspect into this. And second was the lack of trained teachers. So when we joined, so I was the only person from the wildlife background. So I still am, after 7 years, still a single faculty of the wildlife department. But I really took this as an opportunity as well as the challenge to do this. And thanks to the technology, while sitting in Guwahati, I can invite faculties from Bangalore, faculties from Delhi, faculty from WII, or even faculty from abroad to take classes. So that's really gave an opportunity for my students to get exposure. So one of my students used to say that, sir, you gave us buffet, so if continental, Mediterranean, and whatever dishes we want, you gave us. And it was, if we do not able to absorb, it's our fault, not your fault. But that was the biggest challenge. And thankfully, after so right now, currently, this is the 7th batch that I'm teaching, as a 7th and 6th batch. Fifth batch already passed out. So till now, 111 students have enrolled for these courses. And if you look at the gender also, so 50%, 50% and the boys, and almost 60% girls. So students were there. And so gender-wise also, more girls students opted for this course. And reason-wise, we still lagging behind, because almost more than 95% students come only from the Brahmaputra Valley. So that's a little bit worrying. And only 3 students from other states of Northeast India. So we really need to have more representative in our course. So these are some of the challenges. I think now after 7 years, so I must say that we have reached in a position where you can love us, you can hate us, but you cannot ignore us. So that department is in that stage now.
That's great. Yeah. So, as you may have realized, Rita, that I asked him about the opportunities, but he spoke about the challenges. So, I'll have to do a flip and ask you about the opportunities, because you are the one who mobilizes youth in that region towards social action and towards environment conservation. So, what do you think are the unique opportunities that the region offers for the next generation environment leaders?
Yeah, thank you, Asmita, for having us here. I think it's also important to talk of the challenges in some other ways, because my work emerges from there. So, if we really look at, since we are talking about education and the education system, I think something which really goes missing is that the entire design of education, right from schools to colleges, I think nothing is there which binds you to your roots. There's nothing which binds you to your land, your forest, and your rivers. In fact, everything in education takes you away from your land.
Right.
The aspirations are again linked to the urban life. They're linked to this paradigm of development which feeds into the city. So, at the same time, there is no respect for, you may know how to grow your own forest, you may know how to grow your own food, you know how to build your own house, but that is not assigned as knowledge.
Right.
And then you move away from that, and suddenly you feel that you're not you need more education. So I think that is the biggest gap where education is concerned.
Right.
And that carries on even later if you look at the skill development program, which again is feeding into another system. It doesn't teach you to go back to your land or to say that, okay, I have can generate income out of my natural resources. It is not telling you that. Even the skill development programs are feeding into urban life. You're being taught hospitality management, you're being taught how to drive a car, you're being taught how to feed into the electricity thing. I'm not saying those jobs are not good, they are important.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you're talking about rural youth or community youth who are living with the forest and the natural resources, you're not teaching them you can go back, and there's a possible life by using that, forming collectives, forming enterprises around that. So I think our work emerged from that gap. So what we've done is kind of we started about 8 years back. It's called the Green Hub Fellowship. It's for youth from marginalized communities, remote areas, indigenous communities. You may be somebody who hasn't even been to a school. They're all at a very important stage, around the age of 19, 20 to even 30, 40 years old. And what we do is, since I'm a filmmaker, for me, video has been my most learning tool about conservation. Everything I've learned about conservation is through that tool. So we are using video as a transformative tool. How do you really change that mindset? So the fellows live with us for 1 year. They use video as a tool to learn about what is happening on the ground. So they're learning about human animal conflict, they're learning about restoration, they're learning about women's empowerment, but through the use of the video. So while these stories are getting made, what is happening actually is a mindset shift.
Right.
Okay, and that's what we are building towards. So when you're talking about a challenge, I think the biggest challenge is whatever we do in conservation, it needs people. We may do innovations, we may have technology. At the end of it, we need people with that. You need to scale up that thought process. And how do you scale up that thought process? You need a forest of people. So I think that is what we are all working towards. And I think if we can tackle that challenge, where the thought process of conservation becomes systemic, I think that's the beginning, you can say.
Thanks, Rita. Very interesting insights indeed. And I'm definitely going to get back to the use of video as a tool for changing mindsets as well. But for now, Professor Nasreen, we are talking about the Greater Eastern Himalayan region. And we know that Bangladesh lies to the south of I would say, the foothills of the Eastern Himalayas. So do you think you have similar opportunities and challenges? Especially, I kind of resonated with the bit on how our aspirations, our educational aspirations, are often disconnected from the place that we belong to. So do you face similar issues in Bangladesh as well?
Similar, in fact, because I'm just listening to all of you also to the previous session. I have been listening to them because education is the first goal of an individual's life, be it from family, from educational institutions, and from your environment. So I can share my personal experience because you know that within the South Asian region, Bangladesh is a disaster-prone country, geographical location. We are very much vulnerable. 3 major rivers confluencing within Bangladesh. So what we found when there were, I was a student of university, 1987 and 88, 2 consecutive floods happened. And we don't know that how do people cope and why these kind of floods are happening, because this is not in our curriculum. This may be in the engineering solution or structural solutions were there. So when we heard first that what are the causes of this kind of disasters in Bangladesh, what's happening, we heard for the first time the word deforestation. We heard the global warming. Then what happened that I got a scholarship to study overseas. Then we found we don't know anything about how I get to apply there. So then at the time was in the Department of Sociology, because this is a social issues, but everyone is thinking of it as a
Natural science issues.
So natural, so which is not the fact. So then it was very much not in our curriculum that Rita mentioned, and not even any other departments that much taught. So that's why it was a challenge for me, and I studied disasters, and I had to do courses in overseas environment, natural hazards, and research methodology, because I don't know how to apply this. So this is just a personal experience in the early 90s.
Right.
Then gradually we had youth for, and also some environmental movements on those issues, because we have to know that why these are happening.
Yeah.
So that's how the curriculum gradually have the sociology of environment we have developed when coming back the sociology of disasters, and all other disciplines gradually emerge in the policy making level, that how we have involved in the policy making level.
Yeah.
We are involved because we are invited by the government. When they have been getting projects, they didn't have any academics or not even practitioners. We will be dealing with this like training of trainers, and who will be talking about these experts, these areas of specialization. That's how gradually we become involved, and we find a lot of curriculum module gaps, and also specifically the experts, the resource persons who will be telling you and giving the knowledge, inducing the knowledge to youths. So then from the tertiary level, it is other way around.
Right.
The environmental issues went to the curriculum, primary, secondary. And luckily I was involved in almost, because there are only few people who have been working on those environmental issues, and those who have been involved in these having degrees, overseas degrees, and also having students. So gradually we are successful to provide training of trainers to the professionals who will be working in the field of environment and on the disaster management issues, and not taking disaster as a natural phenomena, but thinking of it as a human induced too.
Yeah.
And which we have to have disaster risk reduction. So the education system also had to be changed for next generation, because now we have youth voices who have been working on, like we have in our institute having saying that we are going to home during holiday and planting trees.
Oh.
Go home and plant trees.
I
So
see.
this kind of slogans and everything is coming from the academic as well as the practitioners, as well as from the youth who have been working in many forums. So that's how what I found it's a challenge, and we have to blame ourselves, like the panelists already they have mentioned that we have to change our views, like our paradigm shift. That should be shifted, because how do we change, like in the gender responsive resilience and policy and practices, we are doing mime action through involving youth, and we are giving how to disseminate the signal for cyclones to the people who do not understand this standardized Bangla or English. We are doing some storytelling within South Asian for these intersectional communities. So then we are going to this inclusive and intersectionality approaches through the different, not only through the curriculum, but also the practical lessons. Yes.
Sounds
Thank you.
really inspiring. It is inspiring what you're doing. So I suppose there are challenges, but also we have recognized that there are ways to overcome those challenges. It's definitely going to be difficult, but perhaps we have somehow either figured out or will figure out in a while as to how to overcome those. So you were talking about the change of mindsets, and you did too. So Naranda, you are an academic, and you said in your CV that you're passionate about nurturing young minds towards wildlife conservation in the new generation. So conservation in general is a huge discourse within the environment education field, right? And yet conservation education by definition is basically the process of making people rethink their ideas about wildlife and their habitats. Yet, when it comes to conservation education and practice, we are constantly giving these, I myself included, I suppose, giving our students these discourses about how there are ecosystem services and there are nature's contributions to people, which is why nature needs to be saved or the ecosystem needs to be saved. But do you think you would ever think of restructuring this particular curriculum such that we lay emphasis on nature for its own sake, the intrinsic value of nature? Any life has the right to survive. So, do you think we can ever have a discourse around that?
Uh, I think, yeah, we are doing that actually. So what I really wanted to emphasize, we're talking about all these days, we're talking only about rewilding nature, right? I think we should move beyond this. I think as an academicians, I think we should also do something called the rewilding mind and hearts.
Yes.
I think what I felt during my tenure of this say 6 7 years, that we are kind of a urban students are kind of a disconnected with nature. And first of all, if you George Monbiot, I think very rightly said that unless you are not involved in things, you're never going to save them.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing, that's why if you look at the curriculum of this postgraduate, the first thing that we introduce is the natural history. I think perhaps this is I'm not sure, but this is perhaps the only course that has this art and science of natural history. The first unit that the students are taught is not wildlife conservation, not the complexity of political ecology, not anything else, but first the art and science of natural history. So what does that mean? So it's not a say only about science. It's not only about naming species. So I'll just give you an example. So I give one exercise. I divide students into two groups and ask them to go in one side and note down all the trees, not the name. They can give any name, and the other group will go to other side and they can name it, and then they exchange notes. Then the other group, each group has to go and find the tree that particular person has done it. So then we are nowhere, no taxonomy, nothing like this, just their perception, the illustrations. So we need to involve people. We need to involve students from the beginning. So not bombarded them with the very gory figures initially. First, I think, so one challenges that I always face is when I get students at the PG level, so they have a very half-baked understanding of nature, and in the degree and in the school also, they were taught about something which is not exactly true. So and then it becomes the de-learning process, then relearning.
Yeah.
Right. So that I do, and the first entire semester and second semester dedicated only to understanding the nature for its own sake. Then from third stage, third semester, then they will learn the conservation biology, and fourth semester they will learn about the human society and ecology. So we have structured that syllabus in such a way that the students exposed to natural history first, they will understand. Even I think these are the students that comes. I must admit that most of this come because of the love of wildlife, not because of, say, to solve some bigger environmental problem. So when in the freshers, when you ask them, so why you choose this course, they said, we really love the nature. So I think the initial motivation of joining this course is the intrinsic value. Then suddenly we introduce complexities, saying that this is what it happened. At the end, we sent a very confused person, with coming with a very nice story about the nature and going with a very kind of a not demotivated, but I think the realities.
I was going to say many
Yeah.
lines of our code.
Exactly. So that the reality they go, and then one important thing that I always tell them, that don't be very very critical in your thinking. So when you are thinking about certain things, don't take it on the face value. Evaluate yourself. Do not ape what say other scientists are doing or other regions are doing. So your region is very, very, very specific, unique region. So you need to understand the problems of your places. So I think that give also the kind of ownership in them. And yeah, that's how we do it. And plus we regularly do this bird watching session, then tree watching sessions, then spider watching sessions. So one of my students has done work on the spider, which in the Guwahati, another is working on, say, plant street trees in Guwahati. So we do not have to go to, say, some very exotic or say very fancy looking national park or wildlife sanctuary. The nature is there in Guwahati city. So that's how, and in fact, within the campus, we have done this bird watching session for the last 7 years. So we have a 7-year data of birds from the campus, and we are doing phenology observations of selected trees in the campus. So that is also giving us idea about what is changing, how the phenology is changing. So because if you have to say climate change is happening, we need data, right? So we are also generating data in that way by involving students in each semesters.
Very nice. I was thinking about your exercise, and I was telling myself, what's in a name? The taxonomy exercise, that anybody can name anything for that matter. So Rita, coming back to you, because there are 3 academics on the panel and you are the only interesting one. So
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
You guys are out.
yeah. So let me ask you about, so you were talking about how you learned all about conservation thanks to what you do. And so what is your take on using again videos as a tool to make people, or rather environment generations, the next generation environment leaders, I beg your pardon, appreciate the intrinsic value of nature more? The urge to protect nature simply because it exists, simply because it's beautiful.
So I think it's not such a simple answer, because I think our entire design of the fellowship was driven by the fact that yes, conservation is the final goal. But to reach that, to think that people will protect us just for the sake of nature is not such a simple thought. Especially because all the fellows we are working with come from rural communities, they come from indigenous communities. Livelihood or income generation, whichever way you want to put it, is an important factor. That's why you have so much of migration.
Yeah.
There are many of them, I mean, many youth from the Northeast are working in other parts of India. It's not that only maybe 10% of them make it into really good jobs. Most of them come back. But the thing is, when you're talking about that group of youth, then while one is working towards conservation, the path has to be a combination of both. You're looking at nature, but how do you look at nature linked livelihood? So we were looking, for us, video is a tool. We're not making, the idea is, the outcome is not that, that we want hundreds of filmmakers. The whole idea is, how do you use video as a transformation of the mind? So we've had very beautiful stories, like many of these youth from the Northeast, hunting is part and parcel of their life. They've grown up hunting.
Yeah.
So but what happens is, when you come, and camera is a very beautiful tool, so you're using the camera to get a close-up of an insect, you're using the camera to get a close-up of a bird, and suddenly, instead of using a gun, you're using a camera. And what happens is, you come back and we're looking at the footage, because we have the editing set up there. So all these guys are coming with their footage. You're looking at the footage, you're identifying the thing. And what happens is, suddenly there are 20 more people and saying, wow, what a good shot. And that's it. That's a spark. So we've had, I think every batch, we have people from the forest patrolling staff, or this boy Thangsoi, who's part of this current batch. If you see the photographs he's shown you, he's come back with a picture of him. It's like a group photo with macaques, all dead macaques next to him, which he's hunted.
Okay.
Now, during the fellowship, he suddenly looks at it and he says, I did not realize that this is an endangered species, or it's in my forest.
Yeah.
And then by the time the fellowship is ending, he's saying, ma'am, how do I do this? I want to stop hunting in my village. Now, that is what we catch on to, that first thought.
Yeah.
And then that's the conversation where it begins. And from that, stopping hunting, because that's the most difficult part. But after that process takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So going back to the village, again, the film becomes a very good tool for community dialogue. So he shows the film to his village. This is our forest. This is what we have in the thing. And from there, the livelihood thing starts happening. Whether it's through tourism, whether it's through sustainable forms of agriculture, whether it's through research, there are different forms, so that's what's been happening over the years. So our conversations with the fellows are very layered, and it takes years.
Yeah.
I mean, they join for a year, but then once a fellow, you're always a fellow. So even Anoko, who won the award he's from our first batch, and he's been using the camera, but today he's working with his community to protect the land, get the forest back. So out of almost 90% of the fellows, they're still working with conservation after 8 years, either in the form of films, either by working with their own community. So camera becomes like video is a very, very beautiful tool to make that happen.
Yeah.
But we cannot disengage it from the real issues on the ground of livelihood and all.
Yeah.
So that becomes the starting point. But what makes things happen on the ground is the constant engagement post that.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of collaborations is where it helps.
Yeah.
Like, we are not experts in restoration, but we have a whole network of people who are experts at restoration.
Yeah.
So those guys are then helping a guy like Van Mai, who's working in a remote area trying to get the forest back, and it's like a co-learning space. He's bringing in his traditional knowledge, and there's a group from NCF which is helping him to work out what should be the practice, what is good. So it's like every line of conservation which is emerging from these youth, whether it's to do with education, restoration, tourism, has to be worked with in collaboration with a lot of people. So that's the beautiful part of it also. But I cannot say that just for the heck of nature we can do it at this stage.
Completely get it, yeah.
Hopefully it'll become like that.
But I
you
think
know?
that very transition from somebody who is happily killing macaques to somebody appreciating macaques for their own sake, that itself is a huge jump. And that is quite an achievement, really.
No, and that's the inspiration from the youth. If they talked about the fellowship before this, which is fantastic, because the youth, their minds are fantastic.
Right.
So that's like a lead we have to all take into.
Yeah, I do feel that the fellowship panel was kind of a nice segue into our panel discussion as well. So Rita was talking about indigenous communities, and I know that you have engaged a lot with indigenous communities. I was in fact very intrigued by your doctoral research title, which was basically on coping with floods. And it was very specifically the experiences of rural women in Bangladesh. So very quickly, because unfortunately we are running out of time, how important do you think it would be to highlight the importance of gender equity in formal environmental education? And also, how do you think we could reconcile indigenous knowledge with, again, conventional environmental education?
Thank you. In fact, as has been mentioned by Narayan and Rita, I'm referring always to them because it's very close that we are working. First of all, the word conservation. We didn't have any conservation strategy. Even within South Asia, we must have, because we share so many things. But we don't have that common conservation strategy. So Bangladesh, after long time, developed a conservation strategy, and they didn't get anything on the gender issues in the conservation strategy. But because at that time I was involved in my research, I mentioned that I didn't know that what would be the theory, the coping strategies. So then it was the grounded theory. So I have collected facts from the field. Then the theory emerged that we should not see any community like those who are thinking of vulnerable. In fact, they are the major contributors in the environmental management, coping and adaptation. And that was the theory, which is going on through the academic curriculum as well as the adaptation practices. You see the environmental education also giving us these spaces, and the theory is now well established, and we are applying this in the environmental protection, at the same time applying in the national adaptation and resilience also. So that's how I think that someone has to start, or some people have to start, then it will continue through the dissemination and involving youth, because as you said that intersectionality is also bringing about the persons with disability, and also we are working with the indigenous communities. I had one student, and then large number of students started to do that, the ethnobotanic practices of indigenous community.
Yeah.
And what interestingly we found that there is a age barriers, age gap, the knowledge on the trees, who is like above 80, 70, or below 60, they are giving long list of trees that they know, involved in their everyday lives.
Yeah.
But gradually the young generation, they don't know where the tree, how do they look like. And that the tradition, that ethnobotanic practices of the indigenous community, we are thinking of inviting people like that, botanist and other people also working on that.
Yeah.
That we didn't even know that who are the aggressive species, but now we know that
Yep.
that those are listed. So that's how I think that we are doing good at this stage.
Yeah.
Specifically when thinking of leaving no one behind, or thinking of intersectional community, there are so many communities and all women are not the same.
Of
So
course.
these strata, that highly stratified society, we are also thinking of that. So now the time is that we have already destroyed many things.
Yeah.
So now we cannot find those environment back. But what can we do? The young generation, they can rebuild or like unite all those species that we lost
Yeah.
already. Thank you.
Yeah. I just wanted to quickly say that this extremely bad resolution photo is actually that of a wonderful painting by a Russian artist called Nicholas Rurik, who spent the last 20 years of his life just painting the Himalayas at different times of the day from different angles. Which is to say that even if we spend a part of our lifetimes with the Himalayas, we are still going to, discover new facets of it every single day. So we are leaving this extremely important asset in the hands of the next generation of environment leaders. And I hope they will be engaging with some of the strands that came out in our conversation today about the importance of looking at intrinsic value, how mindset change is probably the most important thing that can happen in this respect, engaging with indigenous communities, engaging with, of course, talking about gender equity. And talking of gender equity, by the way, can we please have a round of applause just for the fact that there are 3 women on the panel? So that's very rare, even in this day and age. Yeah, so we seem to have taken a right step in that direction. Very, very quickly, but I cannot let go of you without asking you this particular question. We have shared histories, shared geographies, shared cultures, and shared environmental problems. I think people in Kolkata and Dhaka were reeling under the soaring temperatures this summer. And we have been talking about what Bangladesh has been doing, and we've been talking about what the India government has been doing. But, just the 4 of us, or whoever is in this room right now, what do you think of a forum wherein Bangladesh and India, I'm not talking about governments, policymakers, whoever, Narayana from India and Professor Nasreen from Bangladesh, you can exchange ideas about how to tackle these issues going forward. So very quickly, but each one of you. So I'll start with Narayana.
I think we have been doing this. I'm before joining Cotton. I'm still a primatologist. So we both said primates, right? The stump-tailed macaque, hulak gibbons, pigtail macaques, Ferris leaf monkey. So there is enough scope, though it's a politically it's a divided, but I think ecologically united, right?
Yeah.
So I think since we are so ecologically united, I think there are a lot of opportunity for students to, in fact, come and also take this course that we are offering.
Yeah.
That is, and also because this course is very unique in the sense that there are other courses which are in the central India and the South India, and this is perhaps one of the unique course which is there in the northeastern India. So I think we can exchange ideas and we can exchange students also.
Yes.
And we can it's not very far. We can also, like if somebody is working in hulak gibbon in Bangladesh and in northeastern India, we can share our research
Yeah.
in a common way, right?
Yeah.
So I think there are a lot of scope for that kind of stuff, and certainly, yeah. There could be a forum. Since I'm a primatology, I'm interacting with the primates already.
Yeah.
People who are working on primates
Who
in
are
these
primates
regions.
also? People, yeah.
So there are a lot of
Yeah.
opportunities here.
Professor Nasreen?
Yes, I am saying about already established network. We have a gender and disaster network, and it is Bangladesh Hub. And we are thinking of taking it India because we are developing curriculum together with another university, Jamshedji Tata University,
I see.
and Bangladesh on intersectionality. So we have two platforms at this moment. One is that GRIP platform and Gender and Disaster Network at our institute. So I'm inviting all of you to become member, and we do research exchange and curriculum development.
Very promising
Thank
indeed.
you.
Rita? Using the video to bring Bangladesh and India together. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's really is when we are talking about borders, it's not just across countries, but if you look at the Northeast and India, we have the state borders, and there are so many conflicts between borders, state borders itself. So what has really worked for us is that the network of fellows, what it does is it really transcends barriers of identity, transcends barriers of boundaries. So I think to really build a very strong network of youth across Bangladesh, India, and exchange ideas, really connect the youth who are working with various forms of conservation and social change, and youth across India who are working with conservation. And that's a huge network. And I think that network of friendship is what I think can be a very, very powerful web of action, I think, for the future.
Yeah.
You know.
That's amazing. And it's amazing that both of you were talking about youth and exchange programs as well, because I think that would be a perfect opportunity for me to invite Professor Bava on stage to make just me? Okay. I mean, he's had enough of the limelight, I suppose. So yeah, he wants me to be hogging the spotlight. So in partnership with the Balipara Foundation, A-Tree, which is the institution that I am affiliated with and Professor Baba is the founder president of, is announcing 2 scholarships for master's and PhD programs in India, in Bangalore mainly. And this particular course, the master's course, is in conservation practice, and we are particularly keen upon welcoming South Asian students and especially Bangladeshi students, I have to say. So please check out our flyers outside, or for that matter, we've also put together some slides. Please take a look, and you can always drop a mail to any of us at any point of time. I would like to thank all my panelists, Balipara Foundation for giving us this opportunity to co-organize this discussion, all of you for being here, and everyone in Bangladesh for the warm welcome that they have given us, which has made this trip truly worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you very much.